"Stop singing, lady. You're scaring away customers." The words hit Renee Parker like ice water, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The melody pouring from her throat was the only thing keeping her tethered to who she used to be, before the world decided she was worth nothing. Before she became invisible. Just 3 more songs, she told herself, fingers trembling around the worn guitar case at her feet. 3 more songs and I'll have enough for something to eat today. The coins inside clinked together, maybe $4 total. $4 after 6 hours of pouring her soul onto the concrete outside Brew and Bean coffee shop. I said stop. The manager's voice cut through her rendition of Strange Fruit, and Renee's eyes snapped open. She'd been lost in the music again, transported back to when crowds would fall silent just to hear her breathe between notes. Now she found herself staring at a young white man in a pristine apron, his face twisted with disgust as he looked at her threadbare coat and the cardboard sign propped against her guitar case. Music heals. Help a sister survive. Behind him, through the floor-to-ceiling windows she'd been forbidden to describe in stories like this, she could see the warm glow of the coffee shop. People in expensive clothes laughed over lattes that cost more than she made in a week. None of them had looked at her once. "This is private property," the manager continued. "I'm calling the police if you don't move along." Renee's voice caught in her throat. Not because of his threat, she'd heard Weiss, but because of the group of young people recording her with their phones. 3 influencers, she could tell by their perfect makeup and ring lights, giggling as they pointed their cameras in her direction. "Oh my God, wait." One of them whispered loudly to her friend. "Keep filming. This is going to be hilarious content. Crazy homeless lady thinks she can sing." The words should have broken her. 6 months ago, they would have sent her running to find a bridge to sleep under, away from the cruel world that had stripped everything from her piece by piece. But something different happened as she watched them mock her. Something that felt like lightning. "Hey, my friend, hope you're doing well. Drop a comment and let me know how you're feeling about this story so far and where you are watching from. Some stories are too close to my heart to share on YouTube. I send those, along with little life lessons and surprises, to my email circle. If you'd like to be part of it, you can join with the link in the description." Instead of backing down, Renee straightened her shoulders and did the one thing that had never failed her. She opened her mouth and let her truth pour out. The first note that emerged wasn't from any song she'd planned. It came from somewhere deeper, from the place where her grandmother's voice still lived, from the church basement where she'd first learned that her gift could move people to tears, from the recording studio where she'd once believed she was going to change the world. "I've been knocked down," she sang, her voice raw but impossibly powerful, "but I won't stay down. You can take my home, you can take my crown, but you cannot take the music from my soul." The manager stopped mid-stride. The influencer's phone trembled in her hand. A businessman walking past actually stumbled, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. But Renee wasn't looking at them anymore. She was looking at something else entirely, something that made her blood run cold and her heart race at the same time. A black sedan had pulled up across the street. Through the tinted windows, she could make out a figure she hadn't seen in 3 years. A figure who'd promised to love her forever, then disappeared the night her world fell apart. The figure who'd stolen more than just her heart. He'd stolen her masters, her publishing rights, and every dollar she'd ever earned. Jackson Cole was back, and he was watching her sing on the street like some kind of broken bird. The realization hit her like a physical blow, but she kept singing. Because if Jackson was here, it could only mean one thing. After 3 years of silence, after letting her believe she was forgotten, something had changed. Someone, somewhere, was paying attention to Renee Parker again. The question was, who? And why now? As her voice reached its crescendo, carrying pain and hope in equal measure, she noticed something else. The influencer who'd been mocking her had stopped laughing. In fact, tears were streaming down her face as she continued to film. The girl's finger hovered over the post button, and in that moment, Renee realized her entire future hung in the balance of whatever happened next. Everything she'd lost, everything she'd dreamed of reclaiming, everything she'd given up hope of ever finding again. It all depended on whether this privileged young woman would share her moment of raw vulnerability with the world. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her redemption might come from the very people who'd meant to destroy her. But as Jackson's sedan pulled away and the girl's phone screen lit up with the words "upload complete," Renee understood that her real test was just beginning. The world was about to remember her name. The question was she ready to remember who she really was? 3 years earlier, Renee Parker had owned a brownstone in Brooklyn, a recording contract worth 7 figures, and a heart full of dreams that seemed as certain as sunrise. She'd also owned something else, complete trust in the man who shared her bed and promised to share her future. Now, as she gathered her guitar and the handful of coins from her case, those memories felt like someone else's life. Someone naive enough to believe that talent and love were enough to survive in a world built on contracts written in disappearing ink. The influencer, Trinity, according to her social media handle visible on her phone screen, had posted the video 4 minutes ago. Already it had 37 views. 37 people had now witnessed what Renee had become, though none of them knew what she'd once been. That was beautiful, Trinity said, approaching cautiously as her friends hung back. Up close, Renee could see she was younger than she'd first appeared. Maybe 22, with the kind of smooth skin that had never slept on cardboard or gone 3 days without a shower. "I'm sorry about, before. We were being awful." Renee studied the girl's face, searching for deception. In her previous life, she'd learned to read people's intentions in the space between their words and their actions. Record executives, managers, promoters, they all had tells. But Trinity seemed genuinely ashamed, which was more than most people offered. "Why did you post it?" Renee asked, shouldering her guitar case. "I don't know." Trinity's voice was small. "At first it was going to be a joke, but then you started singing and I." She paused, struggling with words. "My mom used to sing like that. Before she got sick. There was something in your voice that reminded me of her." The mention of mothers made something twist in Renee's chest. Her own mother had been gone for 5 years now, had died believing her daughter was a rising star with the world at her feet. She'd never known that the daughter she'd sacrificed everything to put through music school would end up sleeping in subway stations and eating from food banks. "The video's getting attention," Trinity continued, holding up her phone. "Like, real attention. People are asking who you are." Renee wanted to laugh, but it would have come out bitter. People were asking who she was now, but 3 years ago, when it mattered, when she'd needed them to ask, there had been only silence. She remembered the day everything changed with crystal clarity. August 15th, a Tuesday that started with her and Jackson planning their engagement party and ended with her discovering that the man she loved had been systematically stealing from her for months. Not just money, though he'd taken plenty of that, but something worse. Her intellectual property, her publishing rights, even the songs she'd written about him during their most intimate moments. "I gotta go," Renee said, but Trinity caught her arm gently. "Wait. What's your name? People are going to want to know." People. Once upon a time, Renee had performed for crowds of 50,000. She'd had platinum plaques on her wall and Grammy nominations. People had definitely wanted to know her name then. "Renee," she said simply, not offering the last name that had once been printed on magazine covers and Billboard charts. "Just Renee. For now." As she walked away, Renee could hear Trinity talking excitedly to her friends about the video, about how many shares it was getting, about how they should find out more about the singing lady. Their voices faded as she turned the corner, but their words lingered. The singing lady. Not Renee Parker, the artist who'd been compared to Lauryn Hill and Alicia Keys. Not the woman who'd sold out venues across 3 continents. Just the singing lady who performed on street corners for enough money to buy a sandwich. The irony cut deep, but it also sparked something. For the first time in months, people were listening to her music. It didn't matter why they'd started listening. What mattered was that they were hearing her voice again. Her phone buzzed. The ancient device was cracked and held together with electrical tape, but it still worked well enough to receive the occasional text. She expected it to be from the shelter, reminding her about curfew, or maybe from the church where she sometimes helped with Sunday services in exchange for a hot meal. Instead, the message made her blood freeze. "Saw the video. We need to talk. Jackson." Somehow he'd found the video in the 4 minutes since Trinity posted it. Which meant either he'd been looking for her online regularly, or someone had sent it to him immediately. Neither possibility felt safe. Another message followed. "Don't ignore me, Renee. Not this time. Coffee tomorrow, 2 p.m., Washington Square Park. South bench by the fountain. Come alone." Her hands shook as she read the words. Come alone. As if she had a choice. As if she had anyone left who might come with her. The truth was, Jackson probably knew exactly how isolated she'd become. He'd had 3 years to keep tabs on her downward spiral, to watch from a distance as the woman he'd once claimed to love lost everything he'd helped her build. But why now? Why reach out after all this time? The answer hit her as she watched Trinity's video notification counter tick upward on her own cracked phone screen. The number was climbing faster now. 347 views, 398, 425. Someone was sharing it. Multiple someones. Jackson wasn't reaching out because he missed her. He was reaching out because other people were starting to pay attention to her again. And in Jackson's world, anything that brought attention to Renee Parker was a threat to the empire he'd built on the foundation of her stolen work. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Renee Parker. The voice was professional, female, vaguely familiar. Who's asking? This is Claire Washington from Spotlight Entertainment. I believe we met briefly a few years ago at the Grammy pre-party. I represent several artists, and I've just seen a video of you performing that's gaining quite a bit of traction online. Spotlight Entertainment. Renee remembered them, one of the boutique agencies that had courted her before she'd signed with Jackson's company, before she'd made the mistake of mixing business with pleasure. I'm not looking for representation, Renee said quickly. I understand your hesitation, given your previous experiences in the industry. But this video is exploding, Renee. In the last 20 minutes, it's been shared by 3 blue-check accounts and it's trending in the inspirational category. People want to know who you are and where you've been. 20 minutes. The video had only been live for 24 minutes total, and already the machine was starting to turn. Renee felt a familiar mixture of excitement and terror, the same feeling she'd had the first time a major label had called her. What do you want? She asked. I want to help you control the narrative before someone else does. This kind of viral moment can go 2 ways. It can launch a comeback or it can become a spectacle that people get bored within a week. The difference is having the right people in your corner. And you're the right people. I'm people who believe second chances shouldn't depend on luck. Can we meet? Tomorrow, maybe? I know a quiet place where we can talk without interruption. Renee closed her eyes. 2 meetings in one day, Jackson demanding to see her, and now a legitimate industry professional offering what sounded like a lifeline. After 3 years of being invisible, suddenly everyone wanted to talk to her. Where? She heard herself say. There's a small cafe in the village, grind coffee. Very private, very discreet. Would 11 a.m. work? Renee almost laughed. She could be there at 11 a.m. because her schedule was completely empty. Her biggest commitment was making sure she got to the soup kitchen before they ran out of portions. I'll be there, she said. Excellent. And Renee, don't talk to anyone else before we meet. Not reporters, not other managers, and especially not anyone from your past who might suddenly reappear. Promise me. The warning sent a chill down Renee's spine. Claire Washington didn't know about Jackson's text, had no way of knowing that someone from Renee's past had already reappeared. Which meant this was standard advice. The kind of thing you told someone when you knew the vultures would start circling the moment they caught the scent of opportunity. I promise, Renee lied. After hanging up, she stood on the corner watching the city move around her. People in expensive coats hurried past, talking on phones, checking their watches, living lives that felt impossibly foreign to her now. Once, she'd been one of them, rushing to studio sessions, important meetings, photo shoots that would help sell her image to the world. Now she was watching that world from the outside, holding a phone with 2 messages that could change everything. One from a woman offering to rebuild her career, and one from the man who'd destroyed it. She thought about Trinity's video, now approaching 1,000 views. Thought about her voice reaching people she'd never meet, touching them the way music had always been meant to. For a moment, standing there in the cold, she allowed herself to imagine what it would feel like to sing for real audiences again. To have her music matter. But as she started walking toward the shelter where she'd tried to claim a bed for the night, one thought followed her through the darkening streets. Jackson wouldn't have reached out unless he was worried. And Jackson only worried when he had something to lose. Which meant that whatever was happening with the video, whatever opportunity Claire Washington represented, it was bigger than any of them were letting on. The question was whether Renee was strong enough to handle the truth when she finally learned what that something was. The video had 47,000 views when Renee woke up at 5:30 a.m. on a cot in the women's shelter. She stared at the number on her cracked phone screen, certain she was misreading it. 47,000 people had watched her sing in the space of 10 hours. More people than had attended her last concert tour, the one that was supposed to establish her as a headlining act, before Jackson's betrayal brought it all crashing down. Holy shit, whispered Lily, the 18-year-old in the cot next to her. Lily had been kicked out by her family for being gay and had been teaching Renee how to navigate the shelter system. Is that really you? The singing lady from the video. Other women were stirring now, pulling out their phones, comparing the face on their screens to the woman lying 3 feet away. Renee felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the thin blanket or communal sleeping arrangements. For months, she'd been anonymous here, just another broken woman trying to survive. Now she was something else, a curiosity. That's definitely her, said another voice. Look, she's got the same scar above her eyebrow. The scar. Renee's hand moved instinctively to the thin line above her left eye, a reminder of the night everything fell apart, when she'd confronted Jackson about the missing royalty payments and he'd shoved her into a glass coffee table during their argument. She'd told the emergency room doctor she'd fallen, protecting the man who'd just finished destroying her life. Can you sing something for us? Lily asked, her eyes bright with excitement. No, Renee said quietly, sitting up and folding her blanket. I can't. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. She could sing. It was literally the only thing she had left. The question was whether she was ready for what came next. By 10:30 a.m., the video had 73,000 views and had been shared by a verified Twitter account belonging to John Legend. His comment, "This woman has a voice that could heal the world. Who is she?" had been retweeted 2,847 times. Renee stood outside Grind Coffee, watching through the window as Claire Washington sat at a corner table, checking her phone and occasionally looking toward the door. Claire looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for successful music industry executive. Sharp black suit, perfectly styled hair, the kind of confidence that came from years of making other people's dreams come true or crushing them entirely. The irony wasn't lost on Renee that she was about to walk into this meeting wearing the same clothes she'd slept in, carrying all her possessions in a guitar case and a garbage bag. But as she pushed through the door, something unexpected happened. Claire stood up immediately, walked over, and embraced her like they were old friends reuniting after a brief absence rather than industry acquaintances meeting after years of radio silence. Renee, Claire said warmly. Thank you for coming. You look. She paused, and Renee braced herself for the polite lie about looking good. You look like someone who's been through hell and survived it. That's exactly what we need. They sat down, and Claire immediately pulled out her iPad. Before we talk about anything else, you need to see what's happening. Your video isn't just viral, it's becoming a movement. The screen showed a compilation that someone had made overnight. Trinity's original video was there, but it had been joined by dozens of others. People singing along to Renee's improvised song. Musicians covering it on their own instruments. A gospel choir in Atlanta performing their own version during Sunday service. This started 8 hours ago, Claire explained. A musician in Nashville posted his own version with the hashtag #IWon'tStayDown. Then a singer in London did the same thing. Now there are hundreds of versions, and they are all crediting you as the original artist. Renee watched, mesmerized, as person after person sang her words. Young people, old people, musicians and non-musicians alike, all connected by the song that had poured out of her pain the day before. The song isn't registered anywhere, Claire continued. No copyright, no publishing, no legal protection. Which means that right now, anyone could claim they wrote it and you'd have no recourse. The words hit like a physical blow. She'd lived this nightmare before, watching Jackson's lawyers argue that her songs belonged to him because they'd been written while she was under contract to his label. She'd lost millions in publishing rights that way, and now it was happening again. What do you want from me? Renee asked. I want to help you file the paperwork to protect your intellectual property before someone else does. I want to help you get a lawyer who will make sure this song, and any others you write, belong to you. And I want to help you turn this moment into something lasting. In exchange for what? Claire smiled. 20%. Industry standard for management. But only if we're successful. If this goes nowhere, you owe me nothing. It sounded too good to be true, which in Renee's experience meant it probably was. But as she watched the compilation video, watched her song spreading across the world like wildfire, she realized she didn't have a choice. She could protect herself now or watch someone else steal her work again. There's something else, Claire said, lowering her voice. I've been in this business for 15 years, and I know what happened to you before. Jackson Cole is already trying to reach out to labels, claiming he has prior rights to any material you create. He's moving fast. Renee's phone buzzed. Another text from Jackson. Time's running out, Renee. Don't make this harder than it has to be. How do you know about Jackson? Because 3 other clients have called me this morning asking about you. Word travels fast in this industry, especially when money's involved. Jackson's been making calls since 6 a.m., trying to preemptively block any deals you might make. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Renee looked around, half expecting to see Jackson watching from another table or lurking outside the window. What if I say yes to working with you? What happens then? Then we file the paperwork today. We get you legal protection immediately. And we start planning how to turn this viral moment into a sustainable career. Renee thought about the shelter, about Lily asking her to sing, about the look in Trinity's eyes when she'd heard her voice. She thought about her mother, who'd died believing her daughter was going to change the world with her music. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Claire's smile was genuine this time. Excellent. I have a lawyer meeting us here in 30 minutes to start the paperwork. But there's one more thing you need to know. What? Jackson isn't the only one who's been making calls. Someone else has been asking about you too. Someone with a lot more power and a lot more money. Before Renee could ask who, her phone rang. The same unknown number from the night before. Answer it, Claire said. Put it on speaker. Hello. Is this Renee Parker? The voice was different this time. Male, older, with the kind of authority that came from decades of making people rich or ruining their lives. Yes. This is Vince Goldstein from Atlantic Records. I believe you know my business partner, Jackson Cole. The world tilted. Vince Goldstein was legendary in the industry. The man who'd discovered half the artists currently dominating the charts. If he was calling personally, it meant the video had reached the highest levels of the music business. I don't know what Jackson's told you, Renee said carefully. He's told me that you're in breach of contract. That any music you create still belongs to his label under the terms of your previous agreement. But I've had my lawyers review that contract, and I think Jackson might be overstating his position. Claire grabbed Renee's hand across the table, her eyes wide. What does that mean? Renee asked. It means I'd like to offer you a new contract. A real one this time, with terms that actually favor the artist. But you'd need to come to New York immediately. Today. And you'd need to bring any legal representation you have. Renee looked at Claire, who was nodding frantically. I have representation, Renee said. Excellent. Can you be at my office by 5 p.m.? Yes. Good. And Miss Parker? Don't talk to Jackson before you get here. Whatever he's offering you, whatever he's threatening you with, it's not worth what we're prepared to discuss. The line went dead. Claire was already standing up, gathering her things. We need to move. Now, if Vince Goldstein's personally involved, this is bigger than I thought. Wait, Renee said. What about Jackson? I'm supposed to meet him at 2. You're not meeting Jackson. You're not talking to Jackson. You're getting on a train to New York with me, and we're going to Atlantic Records to discuss what might be the biggest comeback story in music history. As they hurried out of the coffee shop, Renee's phone buzzed with a new text from Jackson. Last chance, Renee. Meet me at the park or I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. But for the first time in 3 years, Jackson's threats felt empty. Because Vince fucking Goldstein, had just offered her a lifeline, and she was done being afraid of the man who'd already taken everything from her once. The train to New York left in 4 to 5 minutes. She was going to be on it. The train to New York felt like a time machine. Renee pressed her face against the window, watching the familiar landscape blur past as memories flooded back. 3 years ago, she'd made this same journey dozens of times, first-class tickets, designer luggage, a team of assistants managing her schedule. Now she sat in coach next to Claire, her entire life contained in a guitar case and garbage bag, wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in 2 days. Your video just hit 200,000 views, Claire said, refreshing her phone. And there's something else. Ellen's people called. They want you on the show tomorrow if the Atlantic meeting goes well. Ellen. As in Ellen DeGeneres. As in the show that had launched 1,000 careers and could resurrect just as many. That's impossible, Renee said. These things take weeks to book. Not when you're the biggest story on social media. Look. Claire showed her the screen. # I won't stay down was trending worldwide. The original video now had comments in 12 languages. Someone had created a Wikipedia page for her that listed her as American singer-songwriter, viral sensation. Viral sensation. Not Grammy-nominated artist or platinum-selling recording artist. The title she'd earned through years of work. Now she was famous for being discovered by accident, for being mocked by influencers who'd accidentally captured lightning in a bottle. Her phone buzzed. Jackson again. You missed our meeting. Big mistake. Check your email. Renee's stomach dropped as she opened her email app. There, from Jackson's lawyer, was a cease and desist letter. The subject line read, "Immediate cessation of all musical activities, breach of contract." "Claire," she said, her voice tight. "Look at this." Claire read the email, her expression darkening with each line. "This is bullshit. Complete intimidation tactics. But what? But they are moving faster than I expected. This kind of legal action costs money, which means Jackson's scared. Really scared. Scared of what? I'm homeless. What could I possibly do to threaten him? You could tell the truth about what he did to you. And with 200,000 people watching, that truth could destroy him." The train pulled into Penn Station at 3:47 p.m. They had barely an hour to get to Atlantic Records, but first they had to navigate the chaos of the city that had once been Renee's playground. As they emerged from the subway near the Atlantic building, Renee felt the familiar energy of Manhattan washing over her. The sounds, the smells, the relentless pace of people who believed they were changing the world one deal at a time. She'd missed it more than she'd allowed herself to admit. "Miss Parker." A young man in an expensive suit approached them on the sidewalk. He was handsome in that polished, industry way, perfect haircut, perfect teeth, the kind of smile that could charm money out of venture capitalists or convince artists to sign away their souls. "I'm Michael Richardson, Mr. Goldstein's assistant. He sent me to escort you upstairs." As they walked through the gleaming lobby of the Atlantic building, Michael kept glancing at Renee with something that looked like admiration mixed with curiosity. "I have to say, your video is incredible. The whole office has been talking about it all day." "Thank you," Renee said, hyper-aware of how out of place she looked in this temple of success. "Actually," Michael continued, "I'm also a songwriter. I've been working on some material that I think would be perfect for your voice. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime and I could play you a few tracks." Claire shot Renee a warning look, but there was something in David's approach that felt different from the usual industry predators. He seemed genuinely nervous, like he was asking her out rather than pitching a business proposition. "Maybe," Renee said. "Let's see how today goes first." Vince Goldstein's office was everything Renee remembered from her previous life: floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, walls covered with platinum plaques and photos of him with every major artist of the last 30 years. The man himself was smaller than his reputation suggested, but his presence filled the room the moment they walked in. "Renee Parker," he said, standing to shake her hand. "Welcome back to the music business." Welcome back. As if she'd been on vacation rather than surviving on the streets. "Mr. Goldstein," she said carefully. "Please, call me Marcus. Sit down. We have a lot to discuss and not much time to do it." As they settled into leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's cars, Vince pulled out a tablet and showed them a series of charts and graphs. "Your video has generated more organic engagement in 24 hours than most of our artists get in a month of promotion. But more importantly, it's the right kind of engagement. People aren't just watching, they're sharing their own stories about overcoming adversity. You've tapped into something powerful. What exactly are you offering?" Claire asked. Vince smiled. "A recording contract with a $2 million advance, 50/50th split on all revenue after recoupment, full creative control over your material, and most importantly, complete ownership of your master recordings." Renee felt dizzy. It was more than she'd ever been offered before, even at the height of her previous success. It was also the exact opposite of every predatory deal that had destroyed her career the first time. "What's the catch?" she asked. "Smart question. The catch is timing. We need to move fast before this moment passes. The Ellen appearance tomorrow, a single release within 2 weeks, an album within 6 months. Strike while the iron is hot." "And Jackson?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Jackson Cole is a bottom feeder who's been exploiting artists for years. His legal threats are baseless, and our lawyers will make that very clear to him. The question is whether you're ready to fight back." Before Renee could answer, Michael Richardson burst through the door, his face pale. "Mr. Goldstein, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this." He held up his phone, showing a news article with the headline, "Viral Singer's Dark Past, Renee Parker's History of Drug Abuse and Violent Behavior." Renee's heart stopped. The article included photos she'd never seen before, her leaving rehab 3 years ago, a police report from the night Jackson had pushed her into the coffee table, filed under domestic disturbance, and quotes from anonymous sources describing her as unstable and difficult to work with. "This is all lies," she said, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. "I know," Vince said quietly, "but the internet doesn't care about truth. It cares about clicks. And this story is going to explode in the next hour." Claire was already on her phone, damage controlling with publicists and lawyers. But Renee could see the doubt creeping into Marcus's eyes, the same look every executive got when an artist became more trouble than they were worth. "Sir," Michael said hesitantly, "there's something else. Jackson Cole is downstairs. He's asking to speak with Miss Parker immediately." The room fell silent. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Renee could see the sun setting over Central Park, painting the sky the color of old wounds. Somewhere in this building, the man who'd destroyed her life was waiting to finish what he'd started. "What do you want to do?" Vince asked. Renee looked at Claire, who was still frantically making calls. Looked at David, whose eyes held something that might have been genuine concern beneath the industry polish. Looked at Marcus, who was offering her everything she'd ever dreamed of, if she was brave enough to fight for it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The article is just the beginning. Come downstairs alone or I release the photos." Photos. Her blood turned to ice. Jackson had been in her life for 2 years, had access to her most vulnerable moments, her most private struggles. If he had photos from her darkest period, the weeks after her mother's death when she'd barely been able to function, he could destroy not just her comeback, but any hope she had of rebuilding her life. "I have to go downstairs," she said. "Absolutely not," Claire said, hanging up from her call. "That's exactly what he wants. The moment you're alone with him, he has all the power." "He already has all the power," Renee said. "At least this way, I might be able to negotiate." "Miss Parker," Michael said quietly, "would you like me to come with you? I could wait outside, make sure you're safe." The offer surprised her. Michael barely knew her, had no reason to risk his job or his safety for a woman who might be about to lose everything again. But there was something in his voice that reminded her of what kindness sounded like. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." As they headed toward the elevator, Vince called after them. "Renee, you have 30 minutes. After that, I have to assume this deal is off the table. The board won't tolerate this kind of publicity nightmare." The elevator doors closed, and Renee found herself alone with David, descending toward a confrontation that could end her second chance before it even began. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Michael was quiet for a moment. "Because I watched your video this morning, and I cried. I haven't cried at a song in 5 years, but something about your voice." He paused. "My sister was homeless for a while, after she got out of a bad relationship. Nobody should have to sing for survival. Music should be about joy, not desperation." The elevator reached the lobby, and through the glass doors, Renee could see Jackson waiting on the sidewalk. He looked exactly the same, tall, handsome, expensively dressed, the kind of man who made promises in hotel rooms and broke them in boardrooms. Next to him stood a woman with a camera. "He brought press," Michael muttered. Renee understood immediately. Whatever Jackson was planning, he wanted it documented. He wanted the world to see her brought low, wanted to control the narrative of her second downfall just as he'd controlled her first. But as she pushed through the doors to face him, one thought echoed through her mind. She wasn't the same woman he'd destroyed 3 years ago. And she was done letting him write her story. "Hello, Renee." Jackson's voice was exactly as she remembered, smooth as aged whiskey, carrying just enough warmth to make you forget it could burn. 3 years of separation collapsed into nothing as she looked at the man who'd shared her bed, her dreams, and her bank account numbers. He looked good. That was the first cruel truth that hit her. While she'd been sleeping in shelters and singing for coins, Jackson had clearly thrived. His suit was tailored. His skin had the healthy glow of someone who took expensive vacations, and his smile was the same one that had convinced her to sign over her publishing rights in a hotel room in Miami. "Jackson," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake. The woman with the camera, a blonde in her 30s with the predatory smile of a tabloid journalist, immediately started filming. "This is Melissa Santos from Entertainment Tonight," Jackson said. "She's here to document our reunion." "I didn't agree to an interview," Renee said. "Oh, but you did," Jackson replied, pulling out his phone. "Remember our little arrangement. You come down to talk, or I release those photos we discussed." "Well, Melissa here is very interested in the photos too. Aren't you, Mel?" Melissa's smile widened. Our viewers love redemption stories. Former addict makes comeback, then relapses spectacularly. It's very compelling television. Michael stepped closer to Renee. You don't have to do this. Jackson's eyes flicked to David, and something cold passed across his features. And you are? Michael Richardson. I work for Mr. Goldstein. Ah. Jackson's smile became predatory. Well, David, you might want to step back. This is about to get very personal. Instead of retreating, Michael moved protectively in front of Renee. The gesture was small but significant, and it didn't go unnoticed by Jackson, whose jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Let's walk, Jackson said to Renee. Just to the corner. You can bring your new friend if it makes you feel safer. As they moved away from the Atlantic building, Jackson began to speak in the low, intimate tone he'd once used to tell her he loved her. You look terrible, by the way. Homeless really doesn't suit you. What do you want, Jackson? I want to help you. Believe it or not, I never intended for things to go as far as they did. The lie was so brazen, so perfectly delivered, that for a moment Renee almost believed him. This was Jackson's greatest talent, making you complicit in your own destruction. The video is nice, he continued. Very touching. But we both know it won't last. Viral fame never does. In 2 weeks, you'll be forgotten again, and where will that leave you? With a recording contract, Renee said. Jackson laughed. Vince hasn't he told you, has he? About our history. Something cold settled in Renee's stomach. What history? Vince and I are business partners, sweetheart. Have been for 3 years. Ever since you left, we've been collaborating on several projects, including keeping track of your whereabouts. The words hit like physical blows. That's impossible. Is it? How do you think I found you so quickly after the video went viral? How do you think I knew exactly where you'd be today? Michael had gone very still beside her. When Renee looked at him, she saw something in his expression that made her blood freeze. David, she said quietly. He couldn't meet her eyes. Renee, Oh, this is beautiful, Jackson said, clapping slowly. You didn't tell her, did you, David? About who you really work for? The world tilted. Everything. The chance meeting outside the building, David's kindness, his offer to help, recontextualized itself in an instant. You work for Jackson, she said. It wasn't a question. David's silence was answer enough. Michael here has been my eyes and ears at Atlantic for 6 months, Jackson explained. Reporting on which artists Vince is considering, which deals are being negotiated. Very valuable information in our business. Renee felt like she was drowning. The video was supposed to be the beginning of your final humiliation, Jackson said. We've been watching you for months, waiting for the perfect moment. Trinity wasn't supposed to post it with sympathetic commentary, and it certainly wasn't supposed to go viral for the right reasons. But these things happen. Melissa had been filming everything, her camera capturing Renee's devastation in high definition. So you orchestrated this, Renee said, the pieces falling into place. The influences, the mockery, all of it. I orchestrated the setup, Jackson admitted. But the public's reaction? That was all you, baby. Turns out people still respond to that voice of yours. Even when you're singing for quarters on the street. But why? You already destroyed my career. You took everything. Why wasn't that enough? For the first time, Jackson's mask slipped, and she saw the real reason blazing in his eyes. Rage. Pure, unadulterated rage. Because you're supposed to be nothing without me, he exploded. You're supposed to be grateful for what I gave you, not out here trying to rebuild on your own. Do you have any idea what it did to my reputation when you disappeared? When people started asking questions about where Renee Parker went, the truth hit her like a revelation. Jackson hadn't been trying to keep her down out of cruelty. He'd been trying to keep her down because her very existence was a threat to the story he'd told about their relationship. People started digging into our contracts, he continued. Started asking why a promising artist would just vanish after a breakup. I had to spend a fortune on lawyers and PR people to make it all go away. And now you want to come back. You want to tell your side of the story. The photos, Renee said. What photos do you have? Jackson's smile returned, but it was uglier now. The ones from the night your mother died. When you were so drunk you could barely stand. When you begged me to help you end it all. The memory hit like a physical blow. The darkest night of her life, when grief and guilt had made her say things she'd never meant. Jackson had been there, had held her while she sobbed, had promised that things would get better. She'd never known he was recording it. "Those photos get released, and your comeback is over before it starts," Jackson said. "Nobody wants to invest in damaged goods." "You're a monster," Michael said quietly. It was the first thing he'd said since his betrayal was revealed. "No," Jackson replied. "I'm a businessman. And Renee is a product that I created. She doesn't get to rebrand herself without my permission." Renee looked at David, whose face was twisted with what looked like genuine anguish. "How long?" she asked him. "How long what? How long have you been lying to me?" "Since I met you," he admitted. "But Renee, you have to understand." "I don't have to understand anything. I was supposed to get close to you, supposed to gain your trust and report back to Jackson about your plans. But that was before I heard you sing. Before I saw what he'd done to you." "Touching," Jackson said. "But a little late for redemption, don't you think?" Melissa stepped closer with her camera. "Renee, how does it feel to know that your comeback was orchestrated by your ex-boyfriend? That the man who destroyed your career is now trying to control your return to it?" The question hung in the air like challenge. Around them, New York City moved at its relentless pace, people hurrying to meetings, to dates, to lives that had never been dissected and commodified and sold for entertainment. Renee thought about Vince Goldstein upstairs, waiting for her answer. About Claire, who might or might not be trustworthy. About the 2 million people who had now viewed her video, most of whom had no idea they were witnessing the climax of an elaborate revenge plot. "Jackson," she said finally, "you made one mistake." "What's that?" "You forgot that the one thing you could never steal from me was my voice." She turned to Melissa's camera and began to speak directly into the lens. "My name is Renee Parker, and 3 years ago, the man standing next to me stole my career, my money, and my music. He convinced me to sign contracts that gave him ownership of songs I wrote about my own pain, my own life. When I tried to leave him, he threatened to destroy me. When I tried to rebuild, he made sure no one would work with me." Jackson lunged forward, trying to grab the camera, but Michael stepped between them. "She's lying," Jackson said to Melissa. "She's having another breakdown. This is exactly what I was talking about." But Renee kept talking, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Today, he tried to manipulate my comeback, thinking he could control my story one more time. But here's what he doesn't understand. I've been broken before, and I survived it. I've been homeless, and I survived it. I've been forgotten, and I survived that too." She looked directly at Jackson, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. "You can release your photos. You can tell your lies. You can try to destroy me again. But you can't take away the fact that when I opened my mouth yesterday, the world listened. And they are listening now." Jackson's face had gone white. "You have no idea what you're doing." "I'm taking back my story," Renee said. "All of it. The good, the bad, and everything you tried to bury." As she turned to walk back toward the Atlantic building, leaving Jackson and his camera crew on the sidewalk, Michael called after her. "Renee, wait. Please." She stopped but didn't turn around. "I know I don't deserve it," he said. "But let me help you. Let me make this right." "You want to help me," she said, finally facing him. "Then tell the truth. All of it. Everything you know about Jackson's business, about what he's done to other artists, about how this whole thing was planned." Michael nodded, pulling out his phone. "I've been recording our conversations with Jackson for months. I have evidence of everything." Jackson's eyes went wide. "You little." "I was supposed to be your spy," Michael said, his voice steady now. "But I guess you forgot that spies can work both ways." As Jackson realized that his protégé had just turned on him, as Melissa's camera captured his shock and rage, as Michael offered Renee the evidence that could bring down the man who'd destroyed her life, one truth became crystal clear. The war for Renee Parker's soul was just beginning. And for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't fighting it alone. The elevator ride back to Vince Goldstein's office felt like ascending toward Judgment Day. Michael stood beside Renee, his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline, but she couldn't bring herself to look at him. The betrayal cut deeper than Jackson's manipulations because it had felt real. For a few precious hours, she'd believed someone was on her side without wanting anything in return. "Renee," Michael said quietly as they passed the 15th floor. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but—" "You're right," she interrupted. "I don't." The elevator doors opened to chaos. Claire was pacing Marcus's office, speaking rapidly into her phone while Vince stood at his window, his back rigid with tension. They both turned when Renee and Michael entered, and the look on their faces made Renee's stomach drop. What happened? She asked. Your impromptu press conference happened, Vince said, his voice carefully controlled. It's been live-streamed by Entertainment Tonight for the last 20 minutes. 3 million viewers and counting. That's good, right? People are hearing the truth. Claire hung up her phone, her face pale. Jackson's lawyers just filed an emergency restraining order claiming you're making defamatory statements that are damaging his business. They've also frozen all of Atlantic's assets related to your potential deal pending a full legal review of your claims. The words hit like physical blows. They can do that. They can tie this up in court for years, Vince said. And while they do, you can't record, perform, or sign with anyone else. Jackson's essentially imprisoned you in legal limbo. Michael stepped forward. I have recordings that prove everything she said. Jackson admitting to stealing her work, admitting to the manipulation. Recordings obtained through corporate espionage, Vince interrupted, which makes them inadmissible in court and potentially illegal. Congratulations, David. You just gave Jackson grounds to destroy this entire company. The room fell silent except for the hum of the city 15 floors below. Renee sank into one of the leather chairs, the weight of what she'd just done crushing down her. In trying to take back her story, she'd walked straight into another trap. There's more, Claire said quietly. Jackson's people have been busy. They've leaked the photos he threatened you with to 3 major gossip sites. By tomorrow morning, the narrative will be that you're an unstable addict who destroyed her own career and is now trying to blame everyone else. Renee closed her eyes. The photos from the night her mother died, the worst moment of her life, captured and commodified for public consumption. The image of herself broken and grieving, now forever linked to her comeback attempt. How long do we have? She asked. The stories go live in 6 hours, Claire said. Unless what? Claire and Vince exchanged a look that made Renee's blood chill. Unless you publicly retract everything you just said, Vince explained. Issue a statement saying you were having a mental health crisis, that your accusations against Jackson were the result of trauma and substance abuse, and that you're seeking help. You want me to call myself crazy? I want you to have a career, Vince said. This is damage control. We take the hit now, get you into treatment, real treatment, at a facility that will vouch for your recovery, and in 6 months, we try again with a redemption angle. And Jackson? Jackson gets away with everything, Michael said, his voice bitter. Again. Vince turned to Michael with undisguised anger. You don't get to have an opinion here. You created this mess. I was trying to help her. By committing corporate espionage. By secretly recording conversations. You've compromised every legitimate avenue we had to fight this. Renee's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the video. You were always stronger than you knew. Don't let them break you again. Trinity. The influencer who'd started all of this by posting a video meant to mock her. Now she was offering support while the people who were supposed to be helping were telling her to surrender. Another text, this one from Jackson. Last chance, baby. Take the deal Vince's offering you, or I release the rest of the photos. The ones from the night you tried to kill yourself. The phone slipped from Renee's hands, clattering to the floor. She'd forgotten about those photos, had blocked out most of that terrible week when grief and alcohol had made her do things she'd never imagined herself capable of. Jackson had been there for all of it, documenting her breakdown with the cold calculation of someone building an insurance policy. What is it? Claire asked, picking up the phone and reading the message. Her face went ashen. Oh, honey, are there more photos? Renee nodded, unable to speak. How bad? Vince asked. Bad enough to end everything, she whispered. David's phone rang. He answered it without looking at the screen. Hello. David, this is your father. Even across the room, they could all hear the voice. David's face went white as he put the call on speaker. Dad, I'm in a meeting. A meeting where you're committing career suicide. I just got off the phone with Jackson Cole. He's offered to drop all charges against you and Atlantic Records if you publicly state that Renee Parker coerced you into making false recordings. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. David's father was someone important in the industry. Someone with enough power to make this phone call happen, which meant Jackson's reach extended far beyond what any of them had realized. Dad, you don't understand. I understand that you're about to destroy everything I've built. Jackson has evidence that you've been stealing proprietary information, that you've been working against your employer's interests. Unless you cooperate, his pressing charges. Michael looked at Renee, his eyes filled with anguish. I won't do it. Then you'll go to prison. And Ms. Parker will still lose everything, because without your cooperation, Atlantic can't touch this case. The call ended, leaving them in silence. Vince walked to his desk and pulled out a prepared statement. This is what we need you to sign, Renee. It admits to mental health struggles, retracts your accusations, and commits you to seeking professional help. It's the only way to stop this from getting worse. And if I don't sign, then Jackson releases the photos, destroys what's left of your reputation, and you spend the next decade fighting legal battles you can't win. Meanwhile, he continues to profit from the songs he stole from you. Renee looked around the room at the faces of people who claimed to want to help her. Claire, who saw her as a client to be managed. Marcus, who saw her as a risk to be minimized. David, who genuinely seemed to care but whose help had only made things worse. There's a third option, she said quietly. What's that? Claire asked. I walk away. From all of it. The deal, the comeback, the fight. I disappear again, and Jackson gets bored and moves on to his next victim. You can't be serious, Michael said. Why not? I survived 3 years on the street. I can do it again. But your voice. My voice will still be there whether I'm famous or not. Maybe that's enough. She stood up, shouldering her guitar case. Thank you for trying to help me. All of you. But some fights aren't worth winning. As she headed toward the door, Vince called after her. Renee, if you walk out of here now, you'll never get another chance like this. Never. She paused at the door, her hand on the handle. Good. Maybe that's what I need to learn. That I don't need chances. I just need my voice. But as she stepped into the hallway, Michael caught up with her. Wait, he said. There's something else. Something I didn't tell them. I'm done with secrets, David. Jackson doesn't just have your stolen songs. He has a whole catalog of work stolen from other artists. Dozens of them. And I have proof. Renee stopped walking. What are you saying? I'm saying that if we take this public, really public, not just entertainment news but real journalism, we could bring down his entire operation. Free every artist he's ever stolen from. And destroy ourselves in the process. Maybe. But maybe some things are worth destroying yourself for. They stood in the hallway, the elevator bank ahead of them, Marcus's office behind them, and the weight of an impossible choice between them. Why? She asked. Why are you willing to risk everything for this? Michael was quiet for a long moment. Because I listened to your music. The real stuff, from before Jackson. And I realized that some voices are too important to let die in silence. Renee felt tears she'd been holding back for hours finally spill over. Not because of his words, but because for the first time in 3 years, someone had heard her, really heard her, and thought she was worth fighting for. If we do this, she said, there's no going back. Jackson will destroy us both. Then we better make sure we destroy him first. As they stood there in the hallway of one of the most powerful buildings in the music industry, preparing to wage war against a man who'd already proven he could destroy lives without conscience, Renee realized that this was the moment she'd been running toward for 3 years. Not the comeback. Not the fame. Not even justice. This moment of choosing to fight, no matter the cost. The elevator arrived with a soft ding, its doors opening like the mouth of an uncertain future. Together, they stepped inside. The elevator descended in silence, but Renee's mind was racing. 24 hours ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was about to declare war on one of the most powerful men in the music industry, armed with nothing but stolen recordings and the testimony of a woman the world was being conditioned to see as unstable. Where are we going? Michael asked as they reached the lobby. To find the other victims, Renee said. If Jackson's been stealing from artists for years, some of them must still be alive. Still fighting. Michael pulled out his phone and scrolled through a list of files. I have evidence on at least 12 artists spanning the last decade. But Renee, most of them signed NDAs. They can't talk publicly without facing massive legal penalties. Then we find the ones who can't be silenced. They pushed through the lobby doors into the chaos of Manhattan at rush hour. Renee felt exposed on the street, knowing that Jackson's people could be anywhere, that cameras could be recording her every move. But for the first time in 3 years, she also felt something else, purpose. There, Michael said, pointing to a name on his phone. Zara Williams, singer-songwriter from Chicago. Jackson stole 3 of her songs in 2019, but she never signed an NDA because she refused his settlement offer. Why didn't she go public? Because he threatened to destroy her family's business. Her parents own a small record store. Jackson has enough influence to make sure they'd lose their distribution deals, their licensing agreements, everything. Renee understood. Jackson didn't just steal music. He studied his victims, learned what they cared about most, then held those things hostage. It was psychological warfare disguised as business. Call her, Renee said. Michael hesitated. If I contact her now, Jackson will know. He monitors all my communications. Good. Let him know we're coming for him. As Michael dialed, Renee's phone buzzed with notifications. Her video had now been viewed by over 5 million people, but the comments section had become a battleground. Half the viewers were sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity, inspired by her raw honesty. The other half were calling her a fraud, a liar, someone trying to destroy an innocent man's reputation for personal gain. Jackson's PR machine was working overtime. Zara, Michael said into his phone. This is Michael Richardson from Atlantic Records. I'm calling about Jackson Cole. Yes, I know what he did to you. No, this isn't a legal threat. This is an invitation to fight back. While Michael explained the situation to Zara, Renee noticed a black sedan parked across the street. The same one she'd seen outside the coffee shop where she'd been singing. Jackson wasn't just monitoring their communications, he was having them followed. Zara says she'll meet us, Michael reported, hanging up. But only if we can guarantee her family's safety. How do we do that? We don't. That's the point. Jackson wins because he makes the cost of fighting him higher than the cost of staying silent. Renee stared at the black sedan, thinking about all the artists who'd been silenced by that exact calculation. How many voices had been lost because the price of justice was too high? What if we change the equation? She said suddenly. What do you mean? What if fighting him becomes more profitable than staying silent? Before Michael could ask what she meant, Renee was walking directly toward the black sedan. Michael hurried after her, panic in his voice. Renee, what are you doing? She knocked on the passenger window. It rolled down to reveal a man in his 50s wearing an earpiece and the dead expression of someone paid to intimidate people. Tell Jackson I want to make a deal, she said. The man spoke into his earpiece, listened to a response, then looked back at her. Mr. Cole says to meet him at the Meridian Hotel. Presidential suite. 1 hour. Come alone. I'll be there, Renee said. But first, I need him to release one of the photos. The man's eyebrow raised slightly. Which one? The worst one. The one he thinks will destroy me. Post it online in 30 minutes with whatever story he wants to tell. I'll be watching. As the sedan pulled away, Michael grabbed her arm. Are you insane? You just asked him to humiliate you publicly. No, Renee said, her voice steady with newfound resolve. I just took away his nuclear option. He's been threatening those photos because he thinks they'll destroy me. But what if they don't? What if they just make me human? They walked to a nearby coffee shop, not Brew and Bean, where this had all started, but a small independent place where they could sit in a corner booth and plan their next move. As they waited for Jackson to release the photo, Renee felt a strange calm descending over her. I need to tell you something, she said to David. About that night. The night the photos were taken. Michael leaned forward, his attention complete. My mother had just died. Cancer. I'd been taking care of her for months, watching her waste away, and when it was over, I completely fell apart. I drank for 3 days straight, barely eating, barely sleeping. Jackson was supposed to be taking care of me, but instead he was recording you. Planning how to use my grief against me. Even then, he was thinking about how my pain could serve his purposes. Renee. The night his threatening to expose, I did say things about wanting to die. I was in more pain than I'd ever experienced, and yes, I wanted it to stop. But I never tried to hurt myself. Jackson twisted my words, made it seem like I was suicidal when really I was just broken. David's phone buzzed. They both looked at the screen. The photo was exactly as horrible as Renee had expected. Her face was puffy from crying and drinking, her hair unwashed, her eyes empty with grief. The caption read, Viral Sensation's Dark Secret, Renee Parker's suicide attempt covered up by industry insiders. The story accompanying the photo painted her as a deeply disturbed woman who'd tried to kill herself and then blamed everyone else for her problems. It positioned Jackson as a concerned ex-boyfriend who'd tried to get her help but had been rejected and vilified for his efforts. It's everywhere, Michael said, scrolling through social media. Every entertainment site, every gossip blog. They're calling you unstable, dangerous. But as they watched, something unexpected began to happen. The comments weren't going the way Jackson had planned. I lost my mom last year and felt exactly like this. Grief isn't pretty, but it's real. Anyone who secretly records someone at their lowest moment is the real monster here. She looks like someone who's hurting, not someone who's crazy. Why are we shaming grief? My brother died by suicide. This is what real pain looks like. Stop making it entertainment. The tide was turning. Instead of destroying her, the photo was generating empathy. People were sharing their own stories of loss, of dark nights when the world felt too heavy to bear. Jackson had weaponized her pain, but the world was choosing to see it as proof of her humanity. He doesn't understand, Renee said, watching the supportive comments flood in. He's never felt real pain, so he can't recognize that other people respond to it with compassion, not judgment. David's phone rang. It's Zara Williams. Put her on speaker. Renee. Zara's voice was strong, clear, angry. I just saw what Jackson did to you. I also saw the comments. People are standing with you. Will you stand with me too? I've been ready to fight this bastard for 3 years. But I need to know you're serious. Because once we start this, he'll come after everyone we care about. Renee thought about her mother, who died believing her daughter was going to change the world with her voice. Thought about Lily, the 18-year-old at the shelter who'd asked her to sing. Thought about all the artists whose voices had been stolen and silenced. I'm serious, she said. But I can't promise we'll win. I don't need promises, Zara replied. I need justice. How do we do this? Michael was already typing on his phone. I'm sending you files now. Contracts, recordings, financial documents. Everything I have on Jackson's operation. But we need more than evidence. We need a platform. I know someone, Renee said suddenly. Someone who might be able to help. She pulled out her phone and found Trinity's contact information. The young woman who'd accidentally started this whole chain of events by posting a video meant to mock her. Trinity, this is Renee. The singing lady from yesterday. Yes, I saw your text, thank you. Listen, I need your help with something bigger than a viral video. How would you like to help take down the man who's been stealing music from artists for years? The conversation that followed lasted 20 minutes. By the end of it, Trinity had agreed to use her platform and her network of influencer friends to spread the evidence Michael had collected. She also offered something else, a live stream where Renee could tell her full story, unedited and unfiltered. When? Renee asked. Tonight. 8 p.m. I have 2 million followers, and I can get at least 5 of my friends to co-stream it. We're talking about reaching 10 million people, minimum. After hanging up, Renee turned to David. I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to not come to the meeting with Jackson. Absolutely not. I'm not letting you face him alone. You have to. Because someone needs to coordinate with Zara and Trinity, make sure all the evidence gets released during the live stream. And because. She took a breath. Because Jackson is going to offer me a choice tonight. He's going to try to make me choose between destroying him and protecting the people I care about. What people? You. Your career. Your father's business. He's going to threaten all of it unless I back down. David's face went pale. You think I care about my career more than doing what's right? I think you shouldn't have to choose. And I think the only way to beat Jackson is to take away his ability to make those threats meaningful. How? Renee stood up, shouldering her guitar case one more time. By making sure that when he threatens to destroy us, we've already destroyed ourselves. No career left to ruin, no reputation left to tarnish, no safety left to lose. That's insane. That's freedom. As she headed toward the door, Michael called after her. Renee, what if he's right? What if this destroys you? She turned back, and for the first time in 3 years, her smile was genuine. Then at least I'll be destroyed on my own terms. Besides, she added, you can't kill something that's already dead. And the woman who walked into that coffee shop yesterday morning, she was already dead. What Jackson doesn't understand is that dead things can be reborn. And if you're wrong, if this all backfires, then tomorrow morning, I'll still be able to sing. And as long as I can do that, everything else is just noise. She pushed through the door into the New York evening, leaving Michael behind to coordinate the evidence dump that would either save her career or end it forever. The Meridian Hotel was 15 blocks away. 15 blocks to prepare for the conversation that would determine whether justice was possible or whether power would always triumph over truth. As she walked through the city that had once been her home, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, watching your stream tonight. Make them remember why they fell in love with your voice in the first place. A friend. She had no idea who'd sent it, but it didn't matter. For the first time in 3 years, Renee Parker was walking toward a fight she intended to win. The Meridian Hotel's presidential suite was exactly the kind of ostentatious display Renee remembered from her previous life. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, marble surfaces that reflected wealth like mirrors, furniture that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Jackson stood with his back to the door when she entered, looking out at the city he believed he owned. "You're early," he said without turning around. "I wanted to get this over with." This. He finally faced her, and she was struck by how small he looked in the enormous room. 3 years ago, Jackson had seemed larger than life, a man whose approval could make or break dreams. Now she saw him clearly, a middle-aged music executive whose power came not from talent or vision, but from his willingness to destroy anyone who threatened his mediocrity. "You've caused me a lot of trouble today, Renee." "Good." He walked to the bar and poured himself a whiskey, not offering her anything. The power play was obvious and pathetic, a reminder that she was a supplicant in his world, not an equal. "The photo didn't work the way you planned," she said. Jackson's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "No, it didn't. People are surprisingly sentimental about mental illness these days. Very inconvenient." "You mean they have empathy? Something you wouldn't understand. Empathy is a luxury for people who don't have to make difficult decisions." He took a sip of his whiskey. "But that's why we're here. To discuss your difficult decision." He activated a large wall-mounted screen that showed multiple social media feeds, news sites, and what looked like internal company documents. "Your little stunt this afternoon has created quite a stir. Stock prices for 3 companies I'm involved with have dropped. I've received calls from very powerful people who are very unhappy with the attention you're bringing to certain business practices. Afraid people will find out how you really make your money. Afraid people will find out how the entire industry really works." His smile was cold. "You think I'm the only one who's ever acquired publishing rights through creative contractual language? You think I'm the only executive who's ever helped an artist disappear when they became inconvenient?" The implication hit her like ice water. Jackson wasn't an aberration. He was the system. "The live stream starts in 90 minutes, he continued, glancing at his watch. "Your friend Trinity has been promoting it all day. 10 million people, she claims, ready to hear your side of the story. Then you know I'm not backing down." "Oh, but you are." Jackson walked to a laptop on the marble counter and turned it to face her. "Because you're going to call Trinity right now and cancel the stream. You're going to post a video apologizing for your false accusations and announcing that you're checking yourself into a mental health facility for treatment." "Why would I do that?" Jackson clicked a key on the laptop. The screen filled with a live video feed of a small record store. Through the window, she could see a young black woman arranging vinyl albums, completely unaware she was being watched. "Zara Williams' family store in Chicago," Jackson explained. "Very flammable building. Lots of vintage vinyl, old wooden fixtures. Would be a shame if there were an electrical fire." Renee's blood turned to ice. "You're threatening to burn down their store." "I'm explaining cause and effect. You continue this crusade, and unfortunate accidents happen to people you care about." He clicked another key. The screen split to show a second feed, Trinity's apartment building. "Your new friend lives on the 20th floor. Terrible things can happen in high-rise buildings. Gas leaks, elevator malfunctions. You're insane." "I'm thorough." Jackson closed the laptop. "But here's the thing, Renee. I don't actually want to hurt anyone. I just want you to understand the scope of what you're dealing with. This isn't about stolen songs anymore. This is about protecting a system that employs thousands of people and generates billions of dollars in revenue. A system built on exploitation. A system built on reality. Artists create, executives monetize. Artists are emotional, executives are practical. Artists think about art, executives think about survival. You want to destroy all of that because your feelings got hurt." For a moment, Renee felt the old doubt creeping in. The voice that had whispered for 3 years that maybe she was the problem, maybe she was too sensitive, maybe she should just accept that this was how the world worked. Then her phone buzzed. A text from David. "Stream is set up. Evidence is ready. Zara has 5 more artists ready to testify. Whatever he's threatening you with, don't let him win." Another text, this one from Trinity. 2 million people already waiting for the stream. They believe in you. And finally, one from the unknown number that had texted her earlier. Your mother would be proud. Don't let them silence her daughter's voice. Who else knows about this? Renee asked Jackson. About what? About the threats. About the system. About how deep this really goes. Jackson's smile faltered slightly. What are you talking about? Someone's been helping me. Someone with access to information they shouldn't have. Someone who knows exactly how you operate. That's impossible. I control. You control nothing. Renee pulled out her phone and opened the livestream app. Trinity's channel was already active, showing a waiting screen with a countdown timer, 47 minutes until the broadcast. What are you doing? Going live early. She hit the button to join Trinity's stream. Renee. Trinity's face appeared on screen, surprised but excited. You're early. Everyone, look who just joined us. The viewer count was climbing rapidly. 50,000, 75,000, 100,000 people watching in real time. Trinity, Renee said, holding the phone so both she and Jackson were visible. I want everyone to meet Jackson Cole. He's the man who stole my music, destroyed my career, and is currently threatening to hurt people I care about if I don't stay silent. Jackson lunged for the phone, but Renee stepped back, keeping the camera focused on both of them. She's lying, Jackson said to the camera. This woman is having a psychotic break. She's dangerous. But the viewers weren't buying it. The comments were flooding in faster than anyone could read them. Why is he so scared if she's lying? Look how guilty he looks. Record everything. This is evidence. Jackson, Renee said calmly. Tell everyone about the video feeds you just showed me. Tell them about the threats you just made. I don't know what you're talking about. Tell them about the system. About how the entire industry works to silence artists who speak up. Jackson's composure was cracking. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he realized that everything he'd said in private was now being broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people. David, Renee called out, knowing he was watching. Release everything. Now. Within seconds, the live stream's chat exploded with links. Michael was posting every document, every recording, every piece of evidence he'd collected over months of working inside Jackson's operation. But more than that, he was posting similar evidence about other executives, other companies, other artists who'd been silenced. This isn't about me, Renee said to the camera, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. This is about a system that treats artists like products to be used up and thrown away. Jackson Cole isn't the disease, he's just a symptom. The viewer count had passed 500,000 and was still climbing. Other influencers were joining the stream, amplifying it across their own platforms. #Justice for Renee was trending worldwide. Jackson's phone started ringing. Then ringing again. Then buzzing with texts and notifications as his world began to collapse in real time. You have no idea what you've done, he said to Renee, his voice shaking with rage. I've done exactly what you taught me to do, she replied. I've played the game better than you. This will destroy everything. Not just me, everyone. The entire industry will. Will what? Treat artists fairly? Pay them what they are worth. Stop stealing their work. Oh no, how terrible. Jackson's phone rang again. This time he answered it, his face pale. Marcus. Yes, I'm watching. No, I can explain. What do you mean the board is meeting? It's 9 o'clock at night. What do you mean I'm suspended? Renee understood. Vince Goldstein wasn't just Jackson's business partner. He was his boss. And Atlantic Records wasn't going to let one executive's crimes destroy their reputation. You set me up, Jackson said after hanging up. This whole thing was a setup. No, Renee said. This whole thing was justice. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Vince Goldstein. Put it on speaker, Trinity said from the stream. Let everyone hear this. Renee, Marcus's voice filled the hotel suite. First, I owe you an apology. I had no idea how deep Jackson's deception went. When Michael started sending us evidence tonight, we realized that Jackson had been operating a shadow business within our company. What does that mean? It means that the contracts he showed you, the NDAs, even some of the legal threats, they were unauthorized. Jackson was essentially running a criminal enterprise using Atlantic's infrastructure. Jackson sank into a chair, his face ashen. But more importantly, Vince continued, it means that all the publishing rights he claimed to own, all the songs he stole from you and other artists, they are not legally valid. His contracts were fraudulent. The live stream exploded with cheers and celebrating emojis. Over 1 million people were now watching as Jackson Cole's empire crumbled in real time. "There's something else," Vince said. "Something Michael discovered in Jackson's files. Renee, do you remember signing a document the night your mother died? Something Jackson said was just a formality." Renee's heart stopped. "Yes. He said it was insurance paperwork for the funeral costs." "It wasn't insurance paperwork. It was a power of attorney giving Jackson control over all your creative assets in case of your incapacitation due to mental health issues. He's been using that document for 3 years to maintain legal control over your work." The final piece fell into place. Jackson hadn't just stolen her songs, he'd manipulated her grief to get legal permission to do it. "But," Vince continued, "our lawyers have reviewed the document. It was signed under duress, without proper legal representation, and based on fraudulent information. It's completely invalid." Jackson looked up at Renee, his eyes empty with defeat. "You win," he said quietly. "No," Renee replied, addressing both him and the 1 million people watching the stream. "We all win. Every artist whose voice was stolen, every dreamer who was told they weren't good enough, every person who was made to believe that power always beats truth." She turned to face the camera directly. "This isn't about revenge. This is about making sure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else." As police sirens wailed in the distance, someone had called to report the threats Jackson had made on live television. Renee felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Peace. Not because the fight was over, but because she'd finally stopped running from it. The live stream hit 2 million viewers as Jackson Cole was led away in handcuffs, and for the first time since her mother's death, Renee Parker knew exactly who she was and what she was fighting for. 6 months later, the coffee shop looked exactly the same. Same brick facade, same hand-painted sign, same clusters of tables where people hunched over laptops pretending to write the next great American novel. But everything else had changed. Renee stood across the street from Brew and Bean, guitar case in hand, watching the evening crowd through those floor-to-ceiling windows she'd once been forbidden to describe. This time, she wasn't here to sing for coins. She was here to remember. "You sure about this?" Michael asked, walking up beside her. He carried a bouquet of white roses. Lilies had been her mother's favorite, but roses were for new beginnings. "I'm sure." The last 6 months had been a whirlwind that made her viral video seem quaint by comparison. Jackson's arrest had triggered a federal investigation into music industry practices that resulted in 17 more arrests and the recovery of stolen intellectual property worth over $200 million. The FBI had found evidence of a systematic operation spanning multiple labels, involving dozens of executives who'd been stealing from artists for years. Renee's case became the foundation for new legislation, the Artist Protection Act, that required transparent contracts, mandatory legal representation for all signings, and severe penalties for executives who exploited artists' mental health crises. Trinity had testified before Congress about the power of social media to expose industry corruption. Zara Williams had started a non-profit legal fund for artists fighting contract disputes. But the victory had come with costs that still made Renee's chest tighten when she thought about them. Vince Goldstein had kept his word about the recording contract, but the terms were different now. Better, in many ways. She owned her masters, controlled her creative process, and had final approval on all business decisions. The advance was smaller than his original offer, but it was clean money, untainted by the desperation that had nearly made her accept crumbs just to survive. Her first single, "I Won't Stay Down," the song that had poured out of her on this very street corner, had debuted at number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100. The full album, Resurrection, was scheduled for release next month. Pre-orders had already surpassed platinum status. Ellen had been just the beginning. She'd appeared on every major talk show, been featured on the cover of Rolling Stone, the voice that broke the music industry, and been invited to perform at the Grammy Awards as part of a special tribute to silenced artists. But success felt different this time. Quieter. More intentional. The lawyers called this morning, Michael said as they crossed the street toward the coffee shop. Jackson's appeal was denied. He'll serve the full 15 years. Renee nodded but didn't feel the satisfaction she'd expected. Jackson was paying for his crimes, but 15 years couldn't undo the damage he'd caused to dozens of artists. Some of them, she'd learned, had never recovered from having their voices stolen. A few had died in poverty while Jackson profited from their work. "Any word from your father?" David's relationship with his father had been one of the casualties of their war against Jackson. When Michael had testified about the corporate espionage he'd committed, his father's law firm had faced federal investigation. The firm survived, but their relationship hadn't. He sent a card for my birthday, Michael said. Progress, I guess. They'd grown closer over the months of legal proceedings and album recording. What had started as shared trauma had evolved into something deeper, a partnership built on mutual respect and the kind of trust that could only exist between people who'd seen each other at their worst and chosen to stay. And Renee prompted, because she could tell there was more. And I got offered a job. A&R position at Columbia Records. They want someone with experience identifying industry corruption. Renee stopped walking. That's amazing, David. You'd be incredible at that. I told them I'd think about it. Why? It's everything you've worked for. Because I've been thinking about starting my own management company. Something different. Something that actually protects artists instead of exploiting them. They'd reached the coffee shop entrance. Through the windows, Renee could see the same manager who'd threatened to call the police on her 6 months ago. He was training a new employee, gesturing enthusiastically as he explained how to work the espresso machine. Would you be interested in being my first client? Michael asked. The question hung between them, loaded with implications that went far beyond business. Over the past 6 months, their relationship had existed in a strange limbo, too intimate for colleagues, too professional for romance, too important to risk complicating with unclear expectations. David, she said carefully, if we really do this, we need to be clear about what it is. What do you want it to be? Before she could answer, the coffee shop manager spotted them through the window. His eyes went wide with recognition, and he practically sprinted to the door. Oh my God, he said, bursting onto the sidewalk. You're Renee Parker. You're actually here. Hello, Kevin, she said, reading his name tag. I am so sorry, he said, his words tumbling over each other. About before, I mean. When you were singing out here, I was such an ass. I had no idea who you were, but that's no excuse. I was just. You were doing your job, Renee interrupted gently. And you were protecting your customers' comfort. I understand. No, you don't understand. After your video went viral, after everything came out about what you'd been through, I couldn't stop thinking about how many people like you I might have dismissed. How many stories I might have missed because I was too busy judging appearances. He paused, gathering courage for what came next. We'd like to offer you something. A permanent spot to perform here. Friday evenings, if you want. We'll pay you a performance fee, and we'll donate all the tip money to that fund for homeless artists that Trinity started. Renee looked through the window at the warm interior, at the people who might listen to her voice while they sipped their expensive coffee and planned their fortunate lives. 6 months ago, this offer would have saved her. Now, it felt like something else entirely, a symbol of how completely the world had changed. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. No pressure. Just, the offer stands. Always. After Kevin went back inside, practically vibrating with excitement, Michael and Renee found themselves alone on the sidewalk where everything had started. So, Michael said, about my question. What do you want this to be? Renee set down her guitar case and looked at him, really looked at him. Michael Richardson, who'd been hired to spy on her and had ended up risking everything to save her. Who'd recorded his boss's confession and testified before federal investigators. Who'd held her hand during panic attacks triggered by PTSD from her homelessness and celebrated with her when the first royalty check arrived. I want it to be real, she said. All of it. The business partnership, the friendship, whatever else might grow from there. But I need you to know something first. What? I'm not the same person who got destroyed 3 years ago. I'm not the woman who trusted too easily or needed approval too desperately. I'm someone who's been broken and rebuilt herself. Someone who knows her worth and won't compromise it for anyone or anything. Good, Michael said, stepping closer. Because I'm not the same person who took a job spying on you. I'm someone who learned that some things matter more than career advancement or family approval. Someone who'd rather build something meaningful with you than chase someone else's definition of success. The kiss that followed was soft, tentative, and tasted like new beginnings. When they broke apart, Renee felt something she'd thought was lost forever. The ability to trust not just David, but herself. Her judgment, her instincts, her capacity to love without losing herself in the process. So, Michael said, his forehead resting against hers, partners. Partners. In that case, I have a proposition for you. He pulled out his phone and showed her a video that had been posted an hour earlier. It was Trinity, now 23, and running a non-profit that connected social media influencers with social justice causes, standing in front of the United Nations building. The UN wants to create a special committee on artistic freedom, Trinity was saying to the camera. They want artists who've overcome censorship and exploitation to help develop international protections for creative expression. And they want Renee Parker to chair the committee. Renee stared at the phone screen. That's huge. Life-changing. A chance to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else, anywhere in the world. The offer was everything she'd dreamed of and terrifying in equal measure. International advocacy work would mean traveling constantly, speaking at conferences, negotiating with governments and industry leaders. It would mean becoming not just a musician, but a symbol of resistance against systemic oppression. What do you think? Michael asked. I think, Renee said slowly, that 6 months ago I was singing on this corner for enough money to buy a sandwich. And now the United Nations wants me to help rewrite international law. That's not an answer. She looked at the coffee shop where Kevin was already putting up a small sign. Home of Renee Parker's first viral performance. Looked at the sidewalk where she'd stood in threadbare clothes, pouring her pain into the air while strangers walked past without seeing her. Looked at David, who saw her completely and loved what he found. The answer is yes, she said. To all of it. The UN committee, the management company, the performance here on Friday nights. All of it. Even the scary relationship stuff. Especially the scary relationship stuff. They were interrupted by a honking car horn. A taxi had pulled up, and Lily, the 18-year-old from the shelter, climbed out of the back seat. She was wearing a NYU sweatshirt and carrying a guitar case of her own. Renee! Lily called out, practically bouncing with excitement. I got into the music program. Full scholarship. And I wrote a song about everything that happened, and I want you to hear it, Anne. She stopped talking when she noticed David, her expression becoming suddenly shy. Lily, Renee said warmly, this is David. David, this is Lily. She's the one who reminded me that music is supposed to heal people, not just entertain them. Nice to meet you, Michael said, shaking Lily's hand. Renee talks about you all the time. She does. You inspired her to keep fighting when everything seemed hopeless. That's not something you forget. Lily beamed, then turned back to Renee. So will you listen to my song? I know you're probably busy with famous people stuff, but... Lily, Renee interrupted. I will always have time to listen to your songs. Always. As Lily unpacked her guitar, a small crowd began to gather. Someone recognized Renee and started filming. Others were drawn by the music itself. Lily had a voice that carried pain and hope in equal measure, a sound that reminded Renee of herself at 18. I was invisible, Lily sang, sleeping on concrete, dreaming in doorways. But someone saw me, someone heard me, someone said my voice mattered too. The crowd grew larger. People stopped walking, put down their phones, listened with the kind of attention that music deserved. And in that moment, standing on the same corner where she'd been mocked and dismissed 6 months earlier, Renee understood something fundamental about her journey. This wasn't about her comeback. It wasn't about justice for what had been stolen from her. It wasn't even about changing the music industry. This was about something bigger. The radical act of insisting that every voice matters, that every story deserves to be heard, that power should serve art instead of consuming it. As Lily finished her song to genuine applause from the crowd, Renee's phone buzzed with a text from Trinity. Watching the live stream, someone posted of Lily's performance. 50,000 views in 10 minutes. You ready to change the world again? Renee looked at David, who was filming Lily's second song with the focused attention of someone who understood he was witnessing the birth of something important. Looked at Lily, whose voice carried all the raw power that music was supposed to have. Looked at the crowd of strangers who'd stopped their busy lives to listen to a teenager sing about hope. 6 months ago, she'd been broken, homeless, singing for survival on this exact spot. Tonight, she was exactly where she was supposed to be, surrounded by people who understood that music wasn't entertainment, it was transformation. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed an international number. This is Renee. Ms. Parker, this is Ambassador Liu from the United Nations Cultural Council. I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all. We've been following your work, and would like to formally invite you to Geneva next month to discuss the Artistic Freedom Initiative. We believe your experience and advocacy could help us develop protections that would benefit artists worldwide. As Ambassador Liu explained the scope of the project, working with governments to establish international standards for artist contracts, creating a global fund for artists facing legal persecution, developing educational programs about creative rights, Renee felt the same electricity she'd experienced the first time she'd stepped onto a real stage. This was bigger than anything she'd imagined when she'd set out to reclaim her stolen songs. This was a chance to ensure that future generations of artists would never face the choice between their art and their survival. "When would you need an answer?" she asked. "We understand this is a significant commitment. Take whatever time you need. But Ms. Parker, the committee doesn't just want your name or your story. They want your voice. Your real voice, the one that refuses to stay silent even when silence would be safer." After hanging up, Renee stood quietly for a moment, listening to Lily sing another song while Michael handled the logistics of the impromptu street performance that was drawing more people every minute. Her mother had died believing her daughter would change the world with her music. She'd been right, just not in the way either of them had expected. "Ready to go?" Michael asked as Lily finished her set and began packing up her guitar. "Almost." Renee opened her own guitar case and pulled out the instrument that had been her constant companion through 3 years of homelessness and 6 months of resurrection. The strings were old, the body was scarred, but the sound was true. "One more song?" she asked the crowd that had gathered to watch Lily. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Someone held up a phone to live stream. Others called friends to come listen. Within minutes, the same corner where she'd been dismissed as a crazy singing lady was transformed into an impromptu concert venue. But this time, when Renee opened her mouth to sing, she wasn't performing for coins or for survival. She was singing because she had something to say, because the world needed to hear it, because her voice, scarred and powerful and unbreakably true, was exactly what it was supposed to be. "This is for every voice that's been silenced," she sang, her eyes closed, her whole being focused on the music. "Every dream that's been stolen, every artist who was told they weren't enough. This is for everyone who refused to stay down." The crowd joined in on the chorus they remembered from her viral video, their voices blending with hers in perfect, imperfect harmony. Michael filmed it all, tears streaming down his face as he watched the woman he loved claim her space in the world not through revenge or bitterness, but through the simple, revolutionary act of using her voice. As the song ended and the applause faded, Renee looked around at the faces surrounding her. Lily, glowing with the joy of being heard. David, proud and protective and completely present. Strangers who'd become witnesses to something authentic in a world full of artificial moments. "Thank you," she said to all of them. "For listening. For seeing. For proving that music still has the power to bring people together." As the crowd dispersed and they packed up their instruments, Lily turned to Renee with a question that cut straight to the heart of everything. "Do you think it was worth it? Everything you went through, all the pain and the fighting and the risk, was it worth it to get here?" Renee considered the question seriously. The last 3 years had cost her nearly everything: her home, her security, her ability to trust easily. The last 6 months had been a constant battle against people who wanted to use her story for their own purposes. Even now, with success and love and a future full of possibility, she carried scars that would never fully heal. "Lily," she said finally, "I can't say whether my suffering was worth my success. That's not how pain works. It doesn't get justified by what comes after it. But I can say this: I'm grateful for who I became because of what I survived. I'm grateful for the strength I found in my darkest moments. And I'm grateful that my voice is louder now than it was before someone tried to silence it." "That's beautiful," Lily said. "That's true," Renee corrected. "Beauty is just what truth looks like when you're brave enough to face it." As they walked toward the subway station, Michael put his arm around her shoulders, and Renee leaned into the warmth of being loved by someone who'd seen her at her worst and chosen to stay. Tomorrow, she would call Ambassador Liu and accept the UN position. Next week, she would sign the partnership agreement with David's new management company. Next month, she would release an album that transformed her pain into art that might heal other people's wounds. But tonight, she was simply Renee Parker, walking through the city that had once rejected her, surrounded by people who loved her exactly as she was, carrying a voice that had survived everything the world had tried to do to it. Her phone buzzed one last time. A message from the same unknown number that had supported her from the beginning. "Your mother is watching. She's so proud. Keep singing, keep fighting, keep proving that love is stronger than fear." Renee smiled, tucked the phone away, and walked into her future, her voice finally and completely her own. What did this story teach you about the power of finding your voice and refusing to let others define your worth? Throughout Renee's journey from the streets to international advocacy, we see how true strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from transforming it into purpose. Her story reminds us that sometimes the most radical act is simply refusing to stay silent, even when silence would be safer. Drop your thoughts in the comments about moments when you've had to find your voice against overwhelming odds, and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world. Sometimes the stories that challenge us most are the ones we need to hear.